a bit more time for people to settle in. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us here today in this not so good afternoon outside, but very good inside. In our event, which we named towards the interoperable energy ecosystem of the future, where we hope to have the opportunity here today to discuss a lot of relevant subjects, a lot of relevant themes related with energy ICT that supports also everything that we're trying to accomplish here. We have a full agenda here. We have a lot of people here for the debate to present their points of view. And then after the coffee break, we'll have a sort of a round or not so round table, half round, for some of the debate between some of the experts on the area, where we try to have this view more from the industry and application side. There's also an opportunity on the other room to see the development slide that we're doing. Some of them are actually there with a lot of technology there from some of our partners in the project. And it's really interesting for you to get along, to also get to know what you are doing and to question. And for some to get it, because there's been times we met in person. Okay, so thank you again for joining us here today. So my first intervention will be more to focus on what we have in terms of interoperability. So this is a challenge that it's cross-sector and it's cross-domain. So we already know that from our approach from the very beginning when we started running this proposal, that was a challenge in matching the expectations from ICT and energy side. So this is something where we try to couple in this interoperable by nature. This is our, I would say, motor overall. And one of the things we managed to show so far is that despite the sector, despite the area that you work in, despite the competitiveness of the business that we have also in our partners, and you should keep this in mind, we have competitive partners, partners that are in the same market competing for the same solutions, others that are complementary, but still, despite this competition, overall, we managed to successfully demonstrate that interoperability can be a mission and a successful mission. So we have this paradigm change in buildings. It's something that is occurring nowadays with the integration of more and more renewable with the buildings, the necessity to decarbonize the whole buildings, which is something that's ongoing for the past at least 10 to 15 years, and now more pressing than ever, the use of efficient resources in buildings to show that we have the energy at the use of the end users in a way that they can understand that it's relevant and useful for them, without compromising their comfort, without compromising the convenience of having something that's automated for them and at their own fingertips. Of course, this means to integrate renewable generation. So to integrate renewable generation, we cannot do this just by looking at the buildings alone. So we also need to look at the grid side. And this is important also because we also bridge the gap on trying to have DSOs in the project that deal with this challenge also of digitalizing their own system, that it's a system that has a lot of difficulties, a lot of challenges on their own, but in the sense that they would be also interoperable and capable of interacting with the stakeholders in providing services. So we'll have an opportunity to have this discussed today. There's also the end user. Unfortunately, there it's in Portuguese. I used the not the latest version for the presentation, but the idea is quite simple. It's for the end user. So the end user is the key point here. And the end user is someone that needs to be engaged in the whole process, because otherwise the end user won't participate, and even worse, it will become against technology, it will become against the service, because there's perhaps better things that he has in mind to do than manage energy. Energy is still not sexy, but it's becoming more and more and more, especially because now it's pressing the fact that we need to manage energy, as we all know from the context with the war in Ukraine, and even the initiatives at the EU level. We'll see more of this today with Repower EU. It's critical to align the end user and to make them understand that they have a key role here, especially when energy prices are fluctuating as we see it now. And we have to find ways of integrating different services. This idea is different domains, potential sharing, it's something that we have already very keen on integrating. We can see some examples in the exhibition where we have tertiary infrastructure making use of several services for their own, as managing cooling systems, as well as for the end users of their spaces, like charging their EVs. And that's done with a purpose. The purpose of making all of this interoperable with different systems, with some partners of the project, some others that are joining also the demonstration, but ultimately in a way that the end user understands that I'm doing my share to be part of the whole equation. So For those that are not acquainted, I cannot say that most of you aren't. This is the whole process that we have from the project. So the idea is to depart from something that was already a challenge, where they set this path towards interoperability as a mission, as something to be taken care of, and something that should be bridging together from ICT and energy side. So this took us to look for what already existed, to create what we call the use cases and service that can build on top of those use cases, to shape up what will be the interoperability between devices, systems, and interconnection of domains, and then to find ways of having core technologies that make use of ICT to support those services. Ultimately, our goal is then to demonstrate this. It's a hard process, we know it. It has its own challenges, as we had it this morning still. But it's also an interesting point because we can see the technology working and operating. And we are in a point right now where we're taking this into the field, and we're actually also promoting cascading calls within the project where other partners can join in and use this technology that we are providing here. And I won't discuss the technology. We'll see plenty from my colleagues here in the project talk about the framework that we had, what we created as a project, but ultimately to showcase this in pilots. And the pilots are quite diverse. They are coming from 7 different countries, and all of them with their distinguishing factors and commonalities. The commonalities are good for exploiting synergies, for exploiting the way that we present technology from one country to another. And there's always this issue with the regulatory framework that we need to accomplish too. But most of all, the distinguished factor, which is every country has its own specificities, and we're also able to show that. We are a very large project, but we're not an infinite project. So, what's under discussion today? It shouldn't be a surprise. We have ICT. So the ICT, it's the skeleton here. So it's something that we have as supporting data being exchanged between different systems, stakeholders, and devices. This is actually what makes interoperability as we see it. We see interoperability at the plane of semantics, but we'll have other colleagues to talk about semantics today, so I won't go into those details. But most of all, to show some good examples that can come with this cooperation on the semantic side. It's also interesting that we can show, and the project's also fertile in that, show cooperation between initiatives. And actually already having the pilots, which are the ultimate users or the first layer of users in terms of the project, or are they establishing cooperation initiatives with other providers, with other technology providers there, because they are the first in part to have technology working. We have, for instance, the Dutch case with a new building being built, with new technology being deployed there, but not only technology from InterConnect project, more technology there. And the idea, for instance, as in the Dutch case and in many others, is to have more technology brought in and those willing to provide new solutions to also benefit from what we achieve. The Semantic Interoperability Framework, buzzword, will be demonstrated here, but it's really where we can have this side-to-side interoperability between systems. So this is the guests that we have for today. You will probably already met some of them, and we'll have an opportunity throughout this session to talk a bit more about these issues. So we have a large pool that's knowledgeable in very specific and broad areas that we'll have an opportunity to discuss. So I'm also counting on you to put the questions, to not be shy. If you have any doubts, if you have any disbeliefs about the interoperability, about what it can achieve, ask us. We're here to clarify that. We're here to help, and most of all, to convince also others that this is the right path, and this is something that we achieve easily in cooperation. First, to have business in between, that's all fine. It's not an excuse. It's actually a bonus that we can have brought in here. So thank you very much for listening. I'm opening this session, so I'm passing the floor to the next speakers. I'll invite them to join us here today to sit down here while I'll change the presentation for the next speaker, which it's Svet Mihailov, which I'll introduce in a moment. So please, I'll ask Svet and our colleagues from JRC, Laura, and also Fabio, I believe it's also here. Please join us, and Milenko, Fabio, and I'm missing someone. Albert, sorry. Apologies. I'll invite Svet as our next speaker. I have here a brochure to explain who Svet is, but come on, most of us already know. Svet is already working in this interoperability framework from the European side. So as a policy officer, it was one of the key elements so far in our project to actually motivated us in actually pushing forward this idea that interoperability that started with Sarif, with the work that was a seminal work done by people like Laura, like Svet. It's actually something that could be used as a project. So Svet is already very focused on having this work done, especially on the interoperability side, but standardization too. So I'll invite Svet, without further ado, to use his own presentation, which I hope is full screen now, to present his own views. So Svet, go ahead. Thanks.
Thank you, David.
Can you just press forward? Let's try again. Okay, and then if we could see it full screen. Let's try it back and forth. Can you just, the next slide's not working.
Can I do it? Rose there.
Which, if I remove this slide here. Okay. So if nothing else works, so the key should go to the next slide, which you can try on the presenter. Yeah.
Oh, no, it works.
Well done.
Okay, thanks, David. Now you repaired interoperability. Yeah, thanks. So I was presented, not going to go into this detail further, but as David said, what InterConnect is doing doesn't start with the project. It started years ago with many people on here, like Laura, etc. This was just an idea about Sarif. It was just an idea coming from a workshop that the Commission organized with stakeholders. This idea was put into practice in a study in which we built the initial, and then Laura was, of course, the instrumental part of it, to build the initial version of Sarif, the skeleton of Sarif, the first version of Sarif, which is only around energy, only what we mainly test in this project, or what we mainly pilot in this project, this part. And then there was another study that developed the whole end-to-end with the grid and stuff. And then it was enlarged within ETSI, because it was standardized right after the first study, and then it was enlarged with different areas, sectors. The base ontology, which had the extension for different sectors, was reviewed several times. It's under revision now as well, and so on and so on. So it was a long process in which all of us participated. So on one side, of course, the Commission, me in this case, but of course also ETSI, then all the manufacturers within the different associations, and STNO, of course, was involved. Then our Spanish friends from EPM, etc., etc. So it was a work from everybody, a long work that is already, whatever, 8 or how many years in the making. And this is kind of the apogee of piloting in a large scale within Europe. And next, of course, phase is putting into even more into practice, even though there are some appliances that are already supporting it, making it widely accepted and deployed. So this was just opening. But today, of course, I wanted to present a bit some policy background around the energy area, interoperability, IoT, all these kind of things that we have. So what are some of the big political messages, our drivers? On one side is the green digital transition. So we are going greener. We have our targets. One of them being the Fit for 55 by 2030. And then, of course, we have for 2050 and so on. And the targets, of course, are for greening in respect to greenhouse gas emissions, energy efficiency, renewables, etc., etc. Then, yes, we have committed as a final goal to be first climate neutral continent by 2050. The Commission priorities that give birth to this transition, that describe, kind of reflect these transitions are the European Green Deal and Europe Fit for the Digital Age. And then we have the Repower EU that David already mentioned, which has come now with the new situation that we have. And to be honest, this situation, yes, the war started in February, but we had kind of situation already last year. So I think it's a tendency, this was just a catalyzer that pushed the things faster than they were going. But I think we were heading into a problem even before that. And then again, if we go back, it's not kind of a we told you so, but what we were working in the energy area within EU, our reports, our conclusions, our work was all showing the same thing. It was not implemented, at least not on the scale that is required. So that's why we are into this situation now. But okay, now we have the proof, not very pleasant proof, that we should have gone and we should go in this direction. Then together with the other service of the Commission, DGNR, we prepared the Digitalization of Energy Action Plan. So this is again another effort, very focused effort to push digitalization in the energy area. It was a communication, it was quite elaborate, there was a lot of information. Here I've taken out the main intervention areas that were listed there. So it's enhancing a data exchange framework. We have all worked on this. InterConnect has its own framework, etc. We have to pay attention to cybersecurity and data protection. We should empower the consumer to be an active participant in the whole system. We should promote investments in infrastructure, a similar background or whatever that we need. And then we should make sure that whatever digital we implement, ICT solutions, they are carbon neutral, they are energy efficient, etc., etc. So they don't. It's again something that we've been talking and since before. I think Maria is here. We're doing this in the data centers to make sure that they're greener than what they are. They were. They don't produce more pollution and more consumption than what they're saving on the other side, be it in energy, transport, or any other area. So that's the thing. We have our different policy kind of instruments or policy frameworks, if you want. So within DigiConnect, within this commission, we also had the so-called digital decade. So this is the compass and then common targets. And you see here we have targets on skill, the government, how the public service should be digitalized, etc. The infrastructure, and this is very much what we are dealing with in my unit, my directorate, etc. Your work is about infrastructure as well. You see data cloud, connectivity, etc., computing. And then we have business, take-up, and different technologies. Not going to go into much details. Then if we talk about these interoperability platforms, etc., this was a slide that we were showing also on with you in Dublin, trying to summarize some relevant developments within the Commission, etc., to the IoT world, to the platforms that we've been working on as a representative of interoperability. And there you see there's the CHIPS Act, so a lot will be put, I'm not going to go into much detail, but a lot will be put on developing European capabilities in chips. And of course, the chips are very important, even going towards the very edge of the network within IoT devices and so on. They will define the future of IoT devices. We have new industrial strategy. Again, not going to go too much into detail into this, but if we look at next generation IoT, so there we see the move, and I have some slides on this, move to the edge of the computing capabilities. We have seamless connectivity. We have next generation operating systems. You know that we have a core, and now some projects are starting for the Meta OS, etc. So, and I know this should be open source and compliant to all the new tendencies in software building. We have another code that also closed, but the projects are still to start. in swarm intelligence. So not only are we moving to the edge, but also this edge is kind of self-organizing. Cognitive computing continuum, this is upcoming. And then, of course, we have the data strategy, which we now go more into data spaces, etc. But there is also 5G and cloud edge continuum infrastructure, and there are a number of legislation proposals. Again, I have a list further on, like the Data Act, the Digital Market Act, etc. Yeah, if you look at the European strategy for data, the one that was mentioned in the previous slide, it's to develop common data spaces, go into a single market for data. So the very fact that you can, again, we'll have more slides on this, but that you can access data in a uniform way around the union, any data, licensing, and so on, that can technically, etc., be accessed in the same way. And here, if we see, yes, availability of the data to create, innovate the data flows, and there we have the free flow of non-personal data. We have GDPR to take care of protecting the user and the data and so on. And then the rules for access to the data have to be fair, practical, clear. So how much you pay, what is the licensing, what can you access, and so on. Again, if you look at the data strategy, we had on one side addressing the cloud, so this cloud to edge, so the very infrastructure, the very organizing of it. And this is, there we have cloud rulebook, common investment in cloud edge services. We have the common instrument of next generation cloud. Again, with the participation, these kind of instruments are done together with the member states. Talking about member states, we also had, well, probably we have, as I mentioned, there is a common European data space supported by digital program. In the case of energy, it's also supported very much by Horizon Europe. And I have some slide on this later. We have a number of legislation. Again, there is a slide with them listed with bigger letters, so not so much going on. But talking about the member states and how we collaborate with them, again, looking at the initiatives such as the GAIA-X, which is an initiative of the member states, not EU initiative. The EU has other initiatives which are federated, cloud edge, and so on. But the two are very much going hand in hand. And of course, this has to be developed in compliance with what we develop here and so on. And this will contribute to both initiatives that they described. The Common European Data Space, as you know, there are in a number of areas, a number of sectors. Here, of course, we are mostly thinking about the energy data space, but of course, there is also, as you see, health, agriculture, mobility is linked to us, I think, because we're talking about charging of electric vehicles, Green Deal, and so on. So there are different sectors. And what does it mean? We're going to define the high-value data set that will be shared, at least in the first instance, these projects that we are launching within Digital Europe program. Some are launched, some are coming. For energy, it is coming. But for energy, as I said, there is a Horizon Europe, a number of Horizon Europe actions together in one call that are doing the job that some of these initiatives that we have launched in Digital Europe program are doing for the other sectors. They're driven by stakeholders, rich pool of data. Yes, the governance is so when you talk about data space, of course, data space is not some infrastructure that is out there. Not really. Yes, it will be running on some infrastructure. It could be on GAIA-X, it could be the federated European cloud, it could be something else, or it could be that the data never leaves a local platform of some kind, the platform of a DSO, of an energy hub, etc. And so what we define is really the governance, as mentioned here, the technical specification to be used. Again, talking about RFIzing and this kind of interoperability could be playing an important role there. And then licensing and so on. You see technical tools for pooling data and sharing. And then there's the Data Spaces Support Center, which is taking care for all the data spaces to ensure coherence, some technical background, governance, ground again, etc. And then we have, all this is running on some infrastructure. Again, this smart doors, this that is the federated thing that we're building, marketplace, HPC, we're very much focused on AI on demand. So all these different blocks that exist in the digital program being deployed under it can and should be used in developing data space. Again, just saying what I already mentioned, how this is supported for the energy data space. So we have these projects that have started within Horizon Europe that will be preparing the grounds for the energy data space. Then we have deployment project within Digital Europe program. And then, okay, it's also for the other areas that our unit is dealing with. The data support center, the smart middleware, I described the matching cloud service. All these things I already described in digital. Then we go to Connect Europe facilities. And there, I'll show at the end some more details about the project on deployment of pan-European operational digital platforms, either in energy, mobility, or combined. And this is, again, deployment of what we have been talking about in reality as well. And there is budget dedicated for this. So it's important to take care, to pay attention to it and to use it. Here again, some things that we already mentioned. So Gaia X, not going any more into this, but it will be also the vision linked to this energy data space or other data spaces. We have for the Open DEI design principle for data spaces. So the kind of the base is there for further developing, and this is being taken into account when developing the things in the Digital Year program. We have the minimum interoperability mechanisms that we develop in the synchronicity project, which they don't have to be used as is for all the areas, but they give kind of the idea what we should be working towards. Minimum, but sufficient amount of standardization, fast standards or interoperability mechanisms or specifications that can allow us to be interoperable without overloading it on all the details. And here we say that we should be taking care of this triangle, which is on one side buildings, on the other side EV charging, and then the renewables, how they interact with each other. And I think that's very much what InterConnect also has looked into. Well, again, I'm not going to go into details how some activities and responsible organizations that are participating in the standardizing of the data space. You can see familiar institutions, familiar organizations within this graph. The move towards the edge. So we see more and more, and these are our latest activities are very linked to this move. I mean, InterConnect probably was somewhere in between our fully centralized thing and going towards the edge. Now we have projects like this, MetaOS and swarming, etc., that are really about the edge. So what's happening with what we developed before in order to make it compatible to this move of the intelligence to the edge and edge? Of course, everybody understands a different way. It could be very far edge. It could be a device of some kind, or it could be edge like an edge data center, etc. So different functionalities and processing will be moving to a different type of edge. And we are very much taking care that via our programs and policy, we are addressing all these move and all the needs of this move. Some technology drivers for the edge computing. Problem, for example, latency. Of course, it's much faster, and for some applications, like, I don't know, smart mobility, it's super important to have very low latency, so we have to do it closer to the edge. And there's some others, energy footprint. Yes, if you don't sell all the data to the central point and back, which this central point could be at the other end of the earth. So, of course, it could be, not in all cases, but case-by-case basis, could be more economical energy-wise. And then some, security and privacy, if you don't send it all the way, it's more, et cetera, et cetera. So open architectures. Some idea that maybe in the edge will be stronger where we missed out in the cloud. Okay, to be proven if this is the case, and so on and so on. This, again, when we talk in terms of things, interoperability, We will look at reference architecture, open platforms, APIs, ontology, semantics. We are very much there again, but on a more distributed scenario. You see the decentralization move to the edge, computing continuum, data spaces. Okay, I mentioned all these things. And then how we address it. So platforms, then we test them, then we accelerate via some of our instruments, and then it ends up in standardization. This is how we upscale. How we organize the standardization work within the Commission. There is the annual union work program, where we normally were putting their mandates and stuff. But nowadays this has changed, so this is not even 100% correct. I took the slide as is, as I've used it before. But starting from now, and this already ETSI found out and SAREF found out by itself, it's because now we put there what will be funded by the Commission as an action grant. It might not be a mandate, so not a harmonized standard or anything, but an action grant. And ETSI for SAREF just got an action grant there via this way, because this appears there. It didn't appear there for this instance, but now it's appearing there, and then goes into a call for expression of interest. And then we have the rolling plan where we have more details. Because if you look there, even now we have put one action in the first one, which will be hopefully funded. But then in the rolling plan, we have, I don't know, 12 or whatever action points for different stakeholders, not necessarily for the Commission to fund, maybe Commission to act, maybe other stakeholders to act and address it, etc. Maybe via projects, maybe, etc. So it's more detailed. And of course, none of this is developed by the Commission on a standalone basis, not talking to anyone. We are talking to the stakeholders, to you, etc., to write it down. Yeah, it's just see where we are concerned, where we are writing the cloud and edge computing, Internet of Things, and the smart grids and smart metering chapters. And SAREF is appearing in all of this. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to go because it will take too much time. Again, just some of the legal instruments that we have. Data Governance Act, about the trust. Digital Market Act, about market power. Digital Service Act, it's about digital services. Implementation of high-value data sets. That's the potential for probably good of these data sets. The Data Act. And then these are energy acts that I've put. The Implementing Act on Interoperability of Metering Data, and the Implementing Acts for Interoperability. That's under, it was just, I think, adopted, I'm not sure. Yeah, this is how we have developed some architectures and frameworks. I'm not going to go into much. Yeah, maybe I'll just, no, because otherwise we're going to take too much time.
We still have time.
Okay. The GAIA-X, okay, I mentioned its ecosystem of industrial partners, growing network, open architecture and standards. Yeah, and then EC initiatives that I showed, smart middleware, etc., federated cloud, and the GAIA-X to avoid fragmentation duplication. And I think this is not only for these two initiatives, but any other European initiative that we're doing in the same area have to be aligned. Then these digital operational platforms within the Connected Europe facility, the code that will be coming. It's not defined what exactly, in which area, in which kind of service will be implemented. This is not defined. This will be defined by coordination support actions that will be selected in the first stage, a 4 million one. And then based on its decision, it will decide which project is the best. In the call, we have given an example, just to give an example to the people, maybe a platform that will be collecting and sharing the availability of renewable data around the union, the whole union, cross country, within the first stage, probably not the whole union, let's say 10 countries or something, but the idea is to grow it up to the whole union for renewable energy in order to make sure, and this is retrofitting existing architecture infrastructure, like something deployed under cross-border cables, etc., have been deployed. Power cables have been deployed, and he is retrofitting with digital infrastructure with a platform. The platforms that we'll be describing up until now, of course, compliant with RWTH architectures that are upcoming. And then this will be used in order to decrease the amount of curtailed energy in one member state when it can be used in a neighboring one, etc. So, but that's again, that's an example. The CSA might decide that this is not the best use of European money. They can decide on another service. It's up to them what will be implemented. So yeah, the idea is to use, if possible, as much as possible, the federated cloud smart GAICs, all these kind of things that are existing, to use them, if possible, as much as possible. By themselves, the platforms, what they are, the same that we were describing up until now. It's a data platform that will be collecting information, processing it, exposing it maybe for other services, etc., etc. So again, it could be connecting via RFI interconnectors if it's in the energy area or other area. Ideally, the two areas of energy and mobility will be combined into one project. So maybe this charging thing or these triangles that we were saying could be used. And then the deployment. Yes, okay, we expect the consortium in this CSA to be more or less representative, so to have the competence, and if not, to show how they can have the competence in order to evaluate the different options, because they will be looking at, I don't know, 10 options, and say, okay, this is the best project, and then we prepare this project. And then there will be a deployment project that will take over. It will be really prepared by this CSA, so everything, we will know what the project is, who are the participants, the governance body, etc., etc. So the project will just kickstart on the next call that will be coming. Just want to show it because this is an opportunity to put in practice what we have been developing. I think that's it. Should be fine. Thanks.
Okay. So thank you very much, Svet, for the very good presentation. Since we have time, so I would like to extend the courtesy of having some questions from the audience. So feel free to jump in and make some questions. If you don't, I can break the ice, but we have Laura.
Thank you, Svet. I was wondering, so there will be a lot of energy data spaces coming out of these new projects that are starting. And then there will be even an interoperability. So how is it supposed to be? Then there will be many energy data spaces, and then they will be interoperable. They will need to be interoperable with each other. It's a chain that never ends, basically, or they exist as separate entities. How do you see that further developing? Do you have an idea, or?
Yeah, it's actually a very good question, and something, I guess when you say these different data spaces, you're referring to the several projects that are in Horizon Europe, exactly. So, okay, this is part of the problematic, and to be honest, we had discussion with DGNR, etc., on this subject. It's internal kitchen in a way, but because on one side, we're going to have these projects, and then there is this CSA within digital program, which is supposed to put them in real implementation. But then our DGNR colleagues are saying, yes, then we're going to gather a body of experts, of national experts, that will tell which services will be implemented. And I'm telling them if we're spending 40 million in these preparation projects, we're not throwing this out of the window in order that some experts define some other services. So I think it's even going further. This is internal kitchen. Let's see how we agree with them. But for the moment, the call for digital program, I have written it in such a way that these services developed, of course, are implemented in practice. Now, we have spoken to these projects within Horizon Europe, and we have asked them to work in a kind of cluster to make sure that whatever they develop is compliant with each other. Now, is it going to be really at the end? I mean, I think this will be ideal, but let's see how it develops, that we're going to have kind of one data space. Because data space, I say, set of rule, governance, etc. It's not 5 infrastructure that they're going to build. So it is not impossible to have them so aligned that it's kind of one data space. The idea is that they arrive at something like this. We have asked them, it's included in their DOAs and so on. They will be working as a cluster. There is a CSA that will try to make them work together on different subjects. How successful this will be, we will try to steer it. Now, as you know, some projects like InterConnect is staying with us. Some projects are going to the agencies, so we have less of a control on them, less of a hands on them. But let's hope that it's going to work. And it's not that we haven't thought of it, we have. Let's see how we're going to continue working on this subject. And as I said, also aligning with the future deployments and so on to make sure that there is some continuity. Because in a way, Energy was lucky because the actions within the digital era program for the other data spaces, they are each anywhere between 2 and 8 million. But one, here we have 5 going together or something. So this is a big amount that they don't have. And each one of them has as much as the only one on the other side for the other data spaces. So it's a real opportunity. Yes, the synchronization might be a challenge, but it's an opportunity to achieve way more than what the others have achieved with the funding.
Thanks, Matt.
So thank you, Lars. Thank you, Svetlana. If there's any other questions, if not, I'll be provocative. Which is, we were discussing this morning about data being exchanged back and forth. With interoperability, one of the things that we're fostering here is the ability to exchange data. So we are more prone to exchange data and support even data exchange between different systems. Aren't we losing control of data that's being exchanged? This is the provocative question. And the question underlying that is, how can the industry trust that the data being exchanged doesn't compromise their business? We were discussing this morning this issue. And for the end users, all of this ability to exchange data, are we not facilitating opening the door for data to go elsewhere? So my question is, I know this is a paradigm too, how does the Commission see this? This facilitation on one side, still opening the door.
Yeah, that's why I said that we had different instruments and different components that we were addressing in this data space and so on. We're trying to make all this licensing, use, etc., well regulated, well defined, and so on, so as to be fair, etc. If in the data space you are getting this data only in real time for your use only, so of course this decreases the chance that this goes somewhere, because if you store it in a central point and so on, maybe it's easier to access it in an unauthorized way. But there is also, of course, you saw on the slides, we're working on security and privacy and these kind of things. Of course, we have legislation, the GDPR, etc. So, and then there will be more probably that will be developed, to address the new challenge. We do realize that if there is no trust, this is not going to work. And this is mentioned when we talk about data spaces, AI, and all these kind of things. If there is no trust, then companies will cut the access unless they are really forced their hands. So it's always part, if you look at the data strategy, there is the part that is really developing the algorithms and so on, and there is a whole part which is mainly, of course, legislative based, but technical as well, of taking care of trust and security and these kind of things. Exactly because we don't see it taking up if companies are afraid. Of course, there is the component that they will be afraid that the information goes somewhere without being authorized to go there. But also they have to be convinced to release information in the first place, because what is in it for them, this is competitive information for them. Like, I don't know, car company, or the same is for the energy companies. Why would they reveal to somebody what's happening in their grid network, their vehicle for the car companies, etc.? Yes, they will be compensated to some respect, but they will lose this competitive advantage of being the only one that has this information. So they also have to be incentivized and or maybe pushed or something to release data. So that's, yeah, even they don't, even if they're not afraid that it will leak somewhere, the very fact of revealing it, releasing it, probably is not in their in their first sight is not in their interest, etc. So we are addressing all these things in legislative way, and then also, of course, in technical way by increasing cybersecurity, the NIS directive, and all these kind of things. We're looking into the privacy and the security. But in general, my vision of this data space is that the information, in the majority of the cases, will not be leaving in a permanent way the local server or the local platform of the participant, whoever it was, a car company, a city or something, or an energy company. And it will be released on a need basis, only a limited set in real time for whatever they need, or sometimes maybe correlated non real time, but whatever the user that is requesting it needs. And that will be it, which will limit, it's not just a constant flow and storing somewhere, which makes it easier, like our credit card details that are being leaked every now and then from Amazon or from where, I don't know. So the idea is that we don't store it somewhere there, it stays with the providing entity. And that's...
Okay, I think we have another question very quickly.
Okay. I only wanted to add, you talked about privacy and security and about decentralization. In the context of Amazon, Google, and so forth, if I see that, how do you want to achieve that? For me, it's one of the main elements, yeah?
You mean when we move towards the edge that...
Not towards the edge. For me, decentralization is one of the pillars to make it more secure, because it's not only going via one path or via one destination who collects the data.
Mm-hmm. But again, this technically how it's going to be done, again, we have our projects that are dealing now with...
Technically, it's okay. It's easy for me, yeah. But I think, how do we want to approach that, competing with... Today, we send all the information via Amazon, via Google, via Microsoft, or whoever it is in charge. How do we get that, at least in Europe, to be decentralized?
You mean how can we avoid passing via the big, how they call it, hyperscale? Well, of course, one of the things is the development of this smart middleware, other infrastructure, together with GAIX and so on and so on. So we hope that this will be competitive to the big players. How competitive we have to see. And then maybe in some cases, when we have the edge network, even if the cloud core is from the Amazons and the Googles and Microsofts, maybe some information by staying at the edge will be staying in more European kind of setup. Now, having said that, of course, the hyperscalers, they're not sleeping. So, of course, they're developing their edge infrastructure. So there will be competition there as well. It's not that all the edge is European of some kind, and then all the core is from the hyperscalers. It will be a mix. Ideally, we'll be working towards having something European, but can we achieve this? Okay, we're working, as you saw, in research, in legislation, etc., to have everything based in Europe, and then even our suppliers delivering it, and being, I wouldn't say in control, but somehow guaranteed by the local, by the member states or something, in a way. But again, the crystal ball is the same. I have the same as yours in a way.
Okay, thank you very much, Svet. So, for the next presentation, a bit of a different perspective that we have from JRC, our colleagues here, Angel Tarramera, Gisbert, and also Heroe Foretic, who are presenting this view very clearly on the JRC interoperability, where the smart appliances do have a key role. Angel has been working at the JRC alongside as Heroe, mostly in this part of the policy making, the security side of digitalization, in making sure that the energy products and the systems that are developed are actually compliant, not only with the part of security and the part of affordability, but it's also work that's being done regarding the code of conduct, which is an important part. So quite to the chase with the matter we're just discussing, to make sure that even manufacturers and so forth do follow code of conduct. So as a scientific officer, he dives into these matters. We also have Heroe, which is diving into the same matters, but his experience is more on the role of interoperability itself, on digitalization of different fronts, and they for sure will present a very nice perspective on the smart appliances. So I invite both of you to join us here today. I'll try to have your presentation ready. And it should be as easy as this. So please do share. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, and thank you for having us. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hrvoje. I'm here with my colleague Angel. We are both coming from the JRC. Today we are going to present JRC's role in this interoperability story, and mostly we will focus on the energy smart appliances. We will see how the JRC is included. So this will be a short agenda. We will first just introduce the JRC. Some of you may know, some of you may not know what JRC is, what is the role of the JRC. We will present the laboratory, Smart Grid Interoperability Laboratory, that we have in the JRC. Then we will also speak about the interoperability testing methodology. We will show what is the actual current project going on in terms of code of conduct for interoperability. And we will try to answer the question why everyone should be involved into this project. Joint Research Center, JRC, it's one of the European Commission's DGs, so one of the Directorate-Generals, and it's actually one of the biggest one. It has almost 9% of the staff. The general mission of the JRC is to support the policy development with the technical scientific knowledge. So it serves like an arm, extended technical and scientific arm of the European Commission. We are situated on 6 sites in 5 member states. In Brussels we have a headquarters, but the biggest location is in Ispra, is in Italy, where we have around 80% of the staff. We both come from Petten and work in Petten in the Netherlands. What is the JRC role? So we are independent of any commercial, private or national interests. We also don't follow any policy agenda, so we don't plan a policy, we don't write it. We only work with the policy departments, and we are giving our support. Now I will speak and spend a few minutes on the SG Lab, which stands for the Smart Grid Interoperability Laboratory. But first I would just want to introduce the term, which you of course already know what it is, but what we are seeing as an interoperability is the ability of the device, component, application, whatever, to be integrated in the system, to exchange the information with the other components in that system, also to understand that information so it can provide and perform desired functions, while also performing and maintaining the quality of service. This is the location, just the pictures of the locations. We have one Smart Grid Interoperability Laboratory in Petten and one in Ispra. They're similar, they have the similar role. They are both contribute to the digitalization of energy. The one in Ispra is mostly focused on the smart grids, but in Petten we are focusing on the smart home. So it's specialized more in this smart home story. Main objective would be to promote the digital energy solutions and interoperability of such. in the interface between the smart homes and the smart grids. This is just the overview of the scope. So we are testing the interoperability solutions coming from everyone, coming from the industry, market research projects, universities. We promote a common European testing methodology. We will say a few words about that later on. We want to become a knowledge hub. Okay, so everyone can access and have an information. We already have a huge repository, JRC repository, where you can find a lot of technical and scientific reports. And the main, I would say the main key message would be to network with other European industrial actors. So this is just the overview, a few pictures of the inventory that we have over there. We have the smart grid, smart home setup. We have a kitchen. We can also simulate a smart office, for example. We have energy smart appliances. Then we also have the small microgrid. We have, if you see the PVs on the roof, we have the inverters there. We have the battery energy storage system. We have the diesel generator as a backup. We're also testing some mobility solutions like electric vehicles, electric bikes, etc. This is just the overview of what we offer there. We also have a possibility to simulate in real time and also test the interoperability of all these things. So who can benefit from the SG-Lab activities? I would say everyone who is included in the interoperability as such, who is included in the digital energy solutions. We just categorize them a bit in the 4 big categories: consumers, manufacturers, operators, and also standardization bodies. So the key message would be here, everyone can use our premises. If they want to test any interoperability solutions, digital energy solutions, whatever is related, everyone can contact us, and we can probably offer our premises for that. Now I will give floor to Angel.
Hi. So I will be talking about the European Smart Grid Interoperability Testing Methodology. Sorry, just looked at. Okay, this has been, it was published in 2018. We proposed, we designed, and we disseminated this methodology. It's mainly one of the concerns that there is this problem of approach of how to test this interoperability. So this was devised in order to focus on that point and to harmonize to whatever who wanted to, let's say, try to test some interoperability issues, they could follow this methodology. I will just try to go over it. You will see always the QR over there, so you can just check it or just go to our website, and it's going to be easy for you just to read the 90-page report, or there is also a tutorial available. So it's subdivided in 4 phases, which would be the use case creation, the profiling, testing, and analyzing. So I will just cover them in a series of 6 steps, very swiftly, very quickly, but just for the ones who just don't know anything about it. The first one is setting the use case. In this case, could be something really general, like external actor, smart appliance, and consumer, how they are interacting. So in there, we just devise that picture, see who is connected with who, and which standards may be used in order to do that. And then once this base is created, then we go to the basic application profiles, where mainly we specify now the standard that we will need, the options that we will need from that standard, and how these, let's say, the actors, they are going to be interconnect, okay? Which this is something that we expanded a little bit into the basic application interoperability profile, which mainly enhances or the previous case, the BAP, just for checking how these different actors are connecting, how different possibilities that different routes that they can take. Then you should create different, let's say, basic application interoperability profiles for them. And in terms of, there is some standard that is being used twice, there is 2 possibilities, and then the standard is being used twice. It has to be defined like 2 times in order to increase the maximum, let's say, coverage in terms of interoperability between devices. Then, of course, we enter to the next phase, which will be the third. This is designing the experiment. Okay, this is important because experiments are, expensive. So you have to take care, not just miss something, because then you will regret it, because you will spend time and money, and we know that's not interesting. So, and then you have the actual test, which is mainly just checking what we have prepared so far. That's the use cases, the profiling, see how it works, taking some results, working with this, managing or testing how the components are talking to each other. And then we get to the final stage, which we analyzing all what we have planned, done. And of course, even though we have prepared for sure at that point things very carefully, there will be some problems, issues that may need to be attended or solved. Then we should have to go back to the design experiment, the design of the experiment part, and just keep going again with what we did so far. If this is done properly, it would be just once, but we know that theory and practice, they always just not go in hand. So everything, it's being stored all the time within our repository of use cases, which we think this is important, because then it, with time, this gets easier and easier and easier. So I'm just focusing on that part in this repository, that it's a website that we have been creating. It's already done, but we now have to populate it with the use cases. There are some main examples, but pretty much general. They are based in this interoperability smart grid architecture model layers that you have there, and you have here the QR. If you have any questions regarding that, we can just discuss it in the question round or later on. So now I would just switch back to my colleague.
Yeah, we will now just explain a bit about the project that we are currently involved in. The project is actually named Supporting Development of Policy Proposals for Energy Smart Appliances. And the main goal of this project, main mission, will be to propose a code of conduct for interoperability of these smart appliances. In this case, how are we included here? So based on the request from the DG Energy, our policy DG, they requested DG JRC to provide its technical scientific support. This is the project cycle. So we see that there are like seven deliverables of this project. We are now more or less, as you may see, halfway through. We did first 4. We are now in the 5th, which is ongoing, and then we have 6th and 7th. More details I will tell you now. So the first one was to create the project website. It's here, it's available. You will be able to check it out. We have also the QR code which you can access right away. Then we did the 2nd, 3rd, and the 4th one as a joint technical report, which we published. We did some research about the literature with the already existing projects and the initiatives. We developed use cases. Basically, we just took all of the use cases and created 4 generic ones. We will talk about that a bit later. And we defined some principles for data sharing among these appliances. We will also say a few words about that later. For the next part, so for the actual active phase, it's this 5th one, which is the development of interoperability requirements in collaboration with the stakeholders, so with everyone, manufacturers, research centers, industry, academia, universities, everyone. So what we did as a step, we published 2 weeks ago on interoperability, for which the deadline is this Friday, 30th of September. So some of you may have already leave their valuable contribution. If you didn't, you still have time in these few days. Then, based on these results from the survey, we will organize and lead the workshop on the interoperability, which will be held on 8th of November in Brussels in hybrid mode. Registrations will open soon. You will receive the invitation, whoever is in the mailing list. But I would propose that everyone follows the news and developments on this website. You can access it through this QR. Then, based on all these results and everything what we did so far in this project, it will all go through this 6th step, which is the main topic. Is to set up a code of conduct. So together with the DG Energy, we will propose a code of conduct, draft it, consult the stakeholders, of course, based on your input, and we will try to attract the signatories. The seventh step would be to set up the methodology, laboratory procedures for testing the interoperability solutions of energy smart appliances. And the last topic.
So here's the last part. I will just to try to convey why everyone should be involved in this interoperability of energy smart appliances. But mainly, I will also share what we have done in this technical report, just to say in what part, what we have done so far. And luckily, or hopefully, you can just help us to see if there is something wrong, there is something that needs to be changed. That would be really interesting. So as I was saying, the interoperability issue is an issue that everyone has. It's going to be here like in no time. And then the goal is, of course, just putting or inserting in there or making all the manufacturers to contribute from the very beginning of this process of generating energy smart appliances. The way of doing it, as my colleague was saying, is this code, or the first step is the code of conduct. So everyone has a saying, everyone can say whatever they think they feel like or whatever they think that is necessary to include in there. Now is the time to do it. So as I was saying, there are many more like this project in InterConnect, but you have like research facilities, you have associations, you have standardization bodies, member states. I mean, we want to include everyone. I mean, everyone. So we have been trying, or there are like two main challenges for this code of conduct, that it's defining the principles for data sharing, and then the interoperability requirements that energy smart appliances need. So these are the two main things or problems that we try to focus or let's say discuss in our technical report. From that technical report, what we did is just try to extract what are the four main actors that can interact with energy smart appliances. So this would be like the energy provider, the consumer, obviously, and then devices that you could have like outside the house or inside the house. It depends a little bit on which them are, and then the interaction is pretty similar, but with slight differences. You have more information about that in the survey that my colleague just introduced. Then, as he said as well, we tried in the report to make this categorization of use cases. Taking, let's say, the right side, you will see in blue, it's depending on how they communicate with the energy provided. It could be cloud-based, or it could be through an energy gateway, okay? But the main part of the main work was performed on the yellow part, which is just considering the interaction that each actor has with the energy smart appliance. Just goes from explicit demand response, implicit demand response, to local optimal energy consumption, to a standard demand response of use cases, really smart appliance. Just regarding the previews, you have here like different messages that we just took from all these 4 cases that I am showing in yellow. They concern different, we extract the main information from several use cases, we condense it in these 4, and then we were trying to summarize the messages of those use cases and see how they interact with these smart appliances. We say in what and when did they need to say it. So either the actor is talking to the smart appliance or the smart appliance is replying. It just involves data management, like feedback, it would be from the smart appliance or control commands that would come from the actors. And then you have the rest of the table. Sorry, it didn't fit in that slide. It talks about flexibility of the smart appliances, the comfort boundaries that maybe a user can set with the profile, the warnings, emergencies, and control actions that need to be implemented. Then we also include a little bit of SAREF, but there are some people here that know much more about that than we do, but we try to do our best to connect SAREF, but I think as it was mentioned, the idea was born from there, and it's a device center. So we try to link all these general use cases with SAREF in order to see how SAREF can just explain also these use cases, and has to, like, let's say, maintain as this ontology. So just the main topic of this part would be just get involved. Now it's the time. You still have some time to contribute to the survey. Even if you don't contribute to the survey, you always can access to the workshop later on. That it's going to be the more interactive session. It's where things will be discussed. But it's ideal to do it since the very beginning, because it's nice to be there from when things start, as you have seen. So thank you very much. We just keep in touch. We will ask you some questions. Just before that, just letting you know there are like some reference and links that can be accessed through this QR. I'm going to leave this for the round of questions, just in case anyone is interested. You just access the website from our project. And from there, you can just have access to everything that we just mentioned and talk about. So thank you for the invitation. I didn't talk at the beginning. I say it now. And just if there are any questions, we are here.
Okay, so thank you very much to both Angel and Herwe. I have one question, but I'll first defer to the audience if there are some questions. Good one. So
you can start. Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting work, and also for being here with us to explain that. It's tricky, of course, because, well, there is the code of conduct. It's a great idea, and also the testing. It's always, I mean, testing interoperability requires a lot, right? And think also in the homes now, in the smart buildings, because we are heading towards all smart buildings. Also, when you think about the smart readiness indicator, there is the European directive on that, which is not mandatory yet, but now it's on a voluntary basis and so forth. One thing is also how can you also certify, even sometimes in a quick way? So there is the testing that probably requires all this process, and even a certification of interoperability. I'm sure you thought about that, and you have some ideas or so forth, because we also thought, imagine it's somebody that is going there to certify, probably even in a quick way, and doesn't really have the technical background to do that. So how this could be done? And we even thought, okay, how can SAREF or ontologies actually being incorporated also in this smart readiness indicator methodology in order to do that? Is it any related also to what you're doing? Did you get any thoughts on this already?
Can I? Yeah. So yeah, that's a really good question. It's actually you are right. I mean, it's complicated, and this is we are talking about that. We are thinking about how far this will get. Probably it's going to be like quite far, because in the end, as you said, it's coming and it's going to be here. It's not like it's when. So then, we are just working with this code of conduct as a first step. We actually, I cannot tell you where this is going to lead. Of course, we are always talking about that. This is going to be enough. How this is going to be done? Will this require like an official, let's say, standard at the very end? That takes a lot. There is a lot of work to do there. But take this as a first step to go towards this end, towards this certification, to make possible for anyone to, let's say, it's a manufacturer to comply from for us, because so far this is going to be a good practice. Let's say, okay, it's not going to be like mandatory or just at least not for now. So I hope, as a personal, and then with my colleague probably will agree, because we discuss that very often, this will lead to something more, let's say, strong, something more feasible, something that everyone will be able to follow in order to create some smart appliance, introduce it in the European market, and then for everyone to buy in the supermarket, whatever they want to buy their smart appliances, just take it, put it at home, and this is going to be connected with everything. How this is going to be done, this is something that we all need to work with. So we have to come up with this idea, with these problems. What are the main messages, the main problems of interoperability? What can be implemented? What cannot be implemented? And also, like in terms of privacy, that it was discussed here, it's a really main concern of us. We don't have the power to deal with that, and I mean, nor the expertise, let's say, in our group. But we know some people that may have, and they should say what is important. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Yeah. It's in your radar, and
yeah,
it's a process.
Yes, so yeah. It's a process. Yes. Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I don't know if there's any other questions, any other points. Milenko.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. So, question, how do you see a project and solution like coming from InterConnect, being part of the work that you are doing with the test, describing the use cases, tests, and so on? So can a solution or approach from InterConnect be used as a benchmark whenever you're testing? You need some benchmarks to compare with. Is our interoperability framework maybe a candidate for a benchmark solution, or like, let's call it a library of approaches for achieving semantic or syntactic interoperability? And then when you are a manufacturer or application developer, you come and see, okay, I want to check this one because Bosch, Miele are following this compliance. I want to check it. What are the possible solutions? What tools I have on disposal in order not to reinvent the wheel? So are you going to, let's say, ingest and digest some of the outputs of the existing projects that are dealing with interoperability?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you very much. So basically, yeah, from the InterConnect, from other projects, from other initiatives, we will use all the information we can get. And we can say the own project benchmarking will be used, but it will be a summary of all of it. So that's the idea behind this. First, we gathered the information from existing initiatives, projects that were included, and made this technical report. We will now we send out the survey even to more manufacturers, industry, more actors. We will gather all this information. We will try to analyze it, make results, and then we will see how we can proceed. Also, there will be a workshop where everyone could be included. So this is the main point of this, let's say, work up until now. So on the workshop, everyone will have their saying, and who will take in the initiative, who will be the strongest, I would say. I don't know. We cannot say that, but it's a joint effort, I would say. So that's, I don't know if that answers your question. Okay, yeah. Thanks.
Okay, just a very final question, very quickly, because I'm on top of the hour. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. I have a remark and I have a question. The question is there the idea that also in terms of development of the code of conduct, leave some room for the member states to adopt or modify the code of conduct? Because I see a big challenge on the grid side to get this consistent code of conduct in whole Europe. And the remark is that, of course, there are many horizontal topics related to this topic. For example, data privacy, also security. It would also make sense to refer to existing regulations, for example, Cyber Resilience Act or GDPR, and that could also make the development more consistent and easier. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the remark. This is definitely something that we need to take care of. This is going to be, of course, from next week, since this is ending. So we are going to deal with what we have get, and of course we are going to try to combine that with actual knowledge, real knowledge that from real examples. Regarding your questions in terms of applying the code of conduct, as I said, it's good practice so far. So it's way above, let's say, my pay grade, but it's we will try to do our best to make together with you the more consistent document or the more consistent basis to actually push that. Because there is something that has been created, it's already the manufacturers are included since the very beginning, the member states are included in the very beginning because they are invited. So everyone can say whatever they think it's. Of course, it's be difficult to reach an agreement between all parties at 100%. That's impossible. But it would be a trade-off. And how this is going to be implemented, as I said, it doesn't depend on me. But hopefully, this is going to be little by little harmonized, and it's going to gain a little of traction. And things will just keep going and improving. And there will be, at some point, there will be some kind of directive we hope, from the European Union. Otherwise, this would become a little bit of other markets that where United States has been like doing it just free will. Okay, there's going to be some lions that are going to eat other ones, and then they will win, and those are going to be the standards. You have the Asian part that maybe it's harmonized, one brand, the whole country. In Europe, we are trying to, of course, giving everyone a chance and a saying, and then that everyone benefit, everyone being in that. It's going to be a challenge. Not everyone is going to agree on that, but let's hope to, or let's try to make up the perfect or the best solution that we can, that it's now in out. Okay.
No, unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. We're on top of the hour. Otherwise, we won't have room for this. We can continue this discussion
Yes,
on the coffee
Definitely.
break, so it will be a good opportunity there. So thank you very much to her and to Angel for the great presentation. So let's thank them. And for the next presentation, without any further ado, to call in Alberto to join us here today. So Alberto, it's very well known. It's coming from the OpenDI project, which is our sibling project on many of the aspects, outreaching much more than the InterConnect has on other areas such as healthcare and so forth. Alberto will talk for sure about that. It's important to mention that Alberto is joining us here from RWTH Aachen. For those who don't know him, I cannot believe that you don't. But anyhow, he's also have a path throughout the industry from ABB, and he has to share here today very valid points with this integration between the two projects and lessons learned, I hope, from both projects today here with Alberto. So I'll make a small change because I've seen that we're all taking this beautiful light on our heads and our foreheads. So I'll probably ask you to come here to the front.
Yep.
On this microphone and perhaps do it in the front. You can take the presenter too.
Here, you mean?
Yes, not be complimented with this beautiful
yeah,
lighting
yes,
that we have here, but let's try it on the fly. And Alberto, the floor is
Yes.
yours. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you to InterConnect for this invitation. And yes, I mean, the introduction you heard from David about myself and my organization. Today I'm going to talk about the collaboration that we are having with InterConnect from OpenDI since 2.5 years or more. So since when InterConnect started, basically. OpenDI is a CSA, a coordination and support action, that is working in 4 different domains: manufacturing, healthcare, agri-food, and energy. And I am responsible for the part of energy. And that's why I am in collaboration with you. And OpenDI works in different directions. In one direction, that is the working groups, we are at domain specific. So in the energy domain, we have different working groups that are tailoring different aspects that are relevant for the projects that are collaborating with us. And on the other side, we have the vertical direction, that is basically the cross-domain direction. And in this way, we have task forces. We have selected 4 specific topics that are relevant for all the domains that we have. In our case, data spaces, business ecosystem, platforms, pilots, and standards. And the 4th one is business impact. We tackle these topics by merging together all the experts of all the domains that we have from the projects in our ecosystem, and we try to define which is the state of the art, which are the issues, which are the challenges, which are the proposed solution. Of course, we do so also with the support of the technological and business experts that are partners inside the project. For this presentation, I will go into deep, of course, of the energy domain. And here you can see in this slide, which is the ecosystem. From one side, we see inside which are the Horizon 2020 projects that are forming these clusters. They are from different perspectives. Some of them are more related to the TSO, DSO relationships. Some of them, like InterConnect, are more related to the energy home appliances. But anyway, all of them are in common, the data platforms and the data exchange. Outside this system of projects, we have also the external stakeholder of our ecosystem that were our references during these years. So the state of the art that we want to collaborate with, the policies, the discussion that are ongoing, the proposal, the building blocks that are coming, for example, from Gaia X, the achievements of Bridge, and so on. Now I dig into the collaborations that we had, and in particular in one of the working group. One of the working group that was in the energy domain was the one related to the use cases and the pilots. This working group is led by InterConnect, and from the beginning we started to propose a way to harmonize somehow the use cases that we have among the projects that constitute our group. And the solution that we considered was the one of the design thinking methodology proposed by InterConnect, and in particular we identified within the problem framing the description of the pilots via the manifesto and via the ecosystem map that could be applied to all the pilots that were joining our group. And this helped us, and this was the basis, the technology, let's say, to deploy the OpenDI Energy Pilots Explorer. And we released this 1.5 years ago, yes. And it involved 4 projects for the domain for 22 pilots. For these 22 pilots, we're sharing the same frame, so the same template that we have. And this helped us to identify which are the common challenges, which are the most addressed topics, and also which are the comparison among the different platforms that we have from one project to another. Another action, completely different activities that we have was related to the working group on architecture and data exchange frameworks. In this way, we started from the description of the 9 building blocks of the data exchange that was coming from InnoPay. And with discussions and with sessions in our working group, we selected which were the most important one for our projects, in particular, authorization, exchange protocol, data standards, and business model. So we had dedicated interviews, you remember, with Joseph a couple of years ago about which are the different components of the platforms that were involving these building blocks. And then we had synthesized it in a dedicated position paper that was starting with references of common data exchange architectures that we have in the European framework. In doing so, we didn't look only in the energy domain, but we also had a perspective of the cross-domain platforms that somehow were well advanced also in the data exchange, let's say. So Synchronicity proposed, for example, the minimum interoperability mechanism that we heard this before from Svet. And then we try to refer the analysis that we had carried out on the building blocks with respect to the European Energy Data Exchange Reference Architecture, that is basically the architectures proposed by the Data Management Working Group of Bridge. This we heard also before. This is the result basically of the task force. As a reminder, the task force was the instrument within OpenDay to collaborate across the domains. So the goal here was to collaborate with people from manufacturing, healthcare, agri-food, and energy, and to define which are the principles that we have to take into account to deploy a data space. And the design principles that were identified were the data sovereignty, the data level playing field, so how to avoid the obstacle for the new entrants into a data space, a decentralized soft infrastructure, and regarding these, there were some specific building blocks that were proposed for the technical and the governance point of view. And then the governance. So the governance we discussed also before during the Q&A. So which are the relationships that we must ensure among the different actors that are playing in this data space. And this led to this position paper that was design principle for data spaces released in 2021. There is a second iteration of this task force because each of our task force has an initial phase and also a second phase that is related to the assessment of what is proposed. This assessment basically is the considering the design principle for the data spaces, I try to see how they are applicable to the pilots, to the projects that we have in the ecosystem. For this activity, we have involved InterConnect and Platoon. They are two projects that are in our ecosystem. And with the help of Fabio and Milenko, we tailored the analysis of how much are important these building blocks for InterConnect, which are the components, the technologies that were used, and finally, which are the technical reference implementations. Going on with the different task force, the third task force was related to the digital platforms, pilots, and standards. Here we had a stronger role of a trialogue that was also putting some references that were the basis for this activity. And the main result was related to, the goal, let's say, was the aligning digital platforms for DEI, for digitalization European interfaces. And this was the position paper that was released. It's going to be released in a few weeks, and which are the common methodologies that were proposed to deploy reference architectures, again, in all the different domains, so it's shared transversal, which are the key aspects for an interoperability frameworks, and which are the topic of interest for federated platforms. And here we relied so much on the feedbacks that we had from the pilots, from the projects that were in our ecosystem. So for example, the resource management, we have to keep into account, which is the role of the new technologies like the digital twin and artificial intelligence, which is the play level field of the cyber physical system. And finally, again, we cannot forget about the digital governance that has to always to be taken into account for the platform themselves. Here I wanted to highlight the many events that we have organized together with InterConnect. Here are some of the most relevant ones. There were additional ones also as online webinars, but starting from a dedicated conference that we had last September in Bilbao, in Spain, going to the common events like the IoT Week last June, or in Enlit in Milan last year, and also with the CEF webinar on the digital platforms for energy and mobility. Here we try to show and to disseminate the results that we have achieved within the working groups, which were the common view that we have among OpenDay, InterConnect, and also all the other projects in our cluster. And finally, I want to present the last outcome of the collaboration that we have had on the working groups, data exchange of and architectures. So basically, we heard also before about the importance of cross-connecting different sectors within energy, in particular to cross-connect energy intended as electricity, so transmission, production, and distribution of electricity, together with the home appliances, flexibility within the building, but also with the mobility part. So mobility sectors are related to the electric vehicles and how the charging is impacting our smart grids. And this was motivated by the continuous decentralization and digitalization of the energy system, and led to the release of this position paper that is being titled Data Spaces for Energy, Home and Mobility. And it saw the participation of very numerous partners and people from InterConnect. I think half of the people here, maybe they were part of the authors. And digging a bit more of what is included in this position paper. First of all, we started from the electrical side, so for the smart grids. We wanted to see which are the references that we have to keep into account for the data exchange. So starting from the common information model from SIM. But also we analyzed we proposed which was the methodology used in the Platoon project in deploying the ontologies and in their appliances, and then the role of Fireware that is proposing a smart data models initiative, and also the digital twin role in the electricity domain. For the home part, we analyzed the work done by eBus together with OpenADR, so the gateway that is connecting the home and the grid, and then how ZAREF played a role in the InterConnect pilots. And finally, in the e-mobility, which are the challenges that we have in connecting the building blocks of the open data ecosystem and the role of the market that has to be expanded in this direction and connected also to the other sectors that we have. And again, here we relied on use from but related e-mobility. There is also additional part related to the cross-sector perspective. For example, again, the MIM, so the minimum interoperability mechanisms for the flexibility that is involving energy, home, and e-mobility. You can find this paper on the OpenDI website. It's clearly there. We try to disseminate now and also this week, so please, if you're interested, give a look. And finally, I want to conclude this presentation with some key points that were the results of the activities that we have had and are having within the cluster of the energy ecosystem in OpenDI. So we know that we need new use cases, and that new use cases are leading the renovation and the enhancement of traditional models. These new use cases are proposing new components that we have, new components for different parts of the data exchange, so related to the communication, information, and the functionalities that we have. We have new roles of building blocks, but we have also, we trust so much in the cross-domain. So cross-domain also what we have to learn from the manufacturing, how we can integrate with the smart water, all the kind of possible sectors that can integrate the energy. And then, yeah, for an effective data spaces, we cannot avoid, of course, the data sovereignty, the trust, and the governance, because we have to go step by step, piece by piece, and these pieces must be strictly interconnected and well solid each other. Finally, really last remark is the next activities that we are having. We are talking about a workshop related to the ZAREF and ETSI. It is going to take place in this next month. We have the impact assessment and portfolio analysis of IoT solution that is involving InterConnect, and then also the final part of the task forces of our project. Thank you, everybody. If you have clarification needed, questions.
Okay, so thank you very much, Albert, for the very nice presentation and for this collaboration. Long time, 2 years and a half already. Really fast. So, quick question since we're already on top of the hour from anyone here. Okay, so thank you very much, Albert. Thank you for your presentation. So we'll move on to the next presentation. And any questions, please feel free on the coffee break. The next presentation to discuss this further. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so for the next speakers, which I know personally very well. So Fabio and Laura, both senior scientists from EdgeTech, Fabio and Laura from TNO, are here to present one of the major achievements from the project, which is the Semantic Interoperability Framework, and all of it that entails in terms of the definition of the semantic side that we developed on the project. So it will be really interesting to hear from both, as they will present this more detailed view for those that are not fully aware of what semantics means. So it's a pleasure. Has been involved for many years on ZAREF definition. She has brought in a lot of good points in for our knowledge. Fabio has been also working a lot with cloud-based systems, and in all they are experts on digitalization and on semantics, so it would be really great to hear from them. So we'll fetch for the next presentation.
So good afternoon. As David said, my name is Fabio. I'm here together with Lara. We would like today to present you what is one, I would say, the primary key exploitable results that InterConnect will provide us, which is called the Semantic Interoperability Framework. We would like to go to do an overview on what is the challenge of interoperability, how did InterConnect approach it, and we would like also to take this opportunity to, in a nutshell, go a little bit under the hood of what is the Semantic Interoperability Framework, what it does provide, and how it is different from other frameworks and solutions that we currently have on the market, and as a solution for manufacturers and software providers. So, a bit of context, I've been talking about interoperability. So when we talk about interoperability, there is usually some sort of handshake that parties need to have. There is a compromise on it. Is it a data model? Is it a solution? Is it a domain? What is it? So if we do take for an example that we do have two different ecosystems, so a set of digital platforms, usually they have their own devices. So we have here an example of, on the left side, Web of Things, on the right-hand side, eBuzz and Spy, could be others, but we have two different ecosystems. How can they talk to each other in this agreed way? Well, usually, and so far, the most common approach would be for them to agree on a data model. Usually, there is a standard behind it. There is a handshake that, well, we want to exchange data. Let's agree on a data model to do it. So what does this provide? Well, it does provide us interoperability based on a specific data model that is usually supported on a very well-known and agreed standard. But how can we go a little bit ahead? So what does this provide us? Usually, a new approach that we could foster, and this is the key exploitable result that InterConnect tries to provide, is that how would it be a good approach to provide these ecosystems with an adapting software capability, a connector, an adapter, and what would we be able to do if we moved from agreeing on a data model, specific and strict, so that is synthetic interoperability, and moved to agree on a domain, so that is, for instance, an ontology provided by Saref, as we will see ahead. So InterConnect goes along with this approach, and we will see it will provide us a little bit more flexibility to move from what is a strict data model based on a very strict and accompanying standard into moving to a specific domain that will provide us a little bit more freedom in terms of what we can do for today and for the future. So given this context, I will now pass the word to Lara that will explain us a little bit more about the context of Saref and how InterConnect explores.
Thanks, Fabio. So, well, we've been talking about interoperability, so probably it's, well, we all know what it is. Just to give another view of interoperability, also on top of what you've already, our colleagues from JRC already presented, there are several layers of interoperability where typically starts from the basic, the technical and the syntactical interoperability, which is the one that has been so far mostly achieved. And so then what we do in InterConnect, it's already well known, the semantic interoperability. So the idea that we work at the information level. So we raise a little bit the level in which we are talking, and we create these ontologies that are a good way, for example, to guarantee the semantic interoperability. And there are even more, of course, levels, but that's the part where we are the informational, the semantic interoperability, where we are really focusing with so is part. That's the semantic interoperability framework we are talking today is that, which refers to the context that Fabio just sketched before. So different platforms need to talk to each other. Then we create on top of these as kind of adapters, but adaptation to become part of the semantic interoperability framework and world, which doesn't come for free. So there is effort without there, of course, to create these semantic adapters. But so far, our experience is turned to be very good. So there is some effort to do there with the companies, with the partners, but then the results are in there. So that's what we will see. As I mentioned, ontologies can be used to define this common knowledge that can be exchanged. because they are a little bit more abstract, higher level than the data models, and they bring together the common concepts that these data models deal with. Saref is one of those. We heard also from Svet a little bit of history, so it's a long time we are working with that. However, although InterConnect started from that really to scale up and bring to a large scale the ecosystem that was built with the Saref in the years, not all concepts were already present in Saref. So this is actually kind of a common problem because, well, Saref has been built around some important use cases, but of course there are so many, and even more when it's about cross semantic interoperability about different domains, like in this case of InterConnect. Well, we had a lot of new use cases in InterConnect and services to be delivered by the project and Sarefized. That's why we had to create something new in Saref, so to extend it a little bit. Well, this is what Saref is anyways. We've been talking today also about data spaces for energy and especially also for energy, home and mobility. And Saref is an initiative that it's really many, many years, started in 2014. So it's a very solid, mature, sustainable ecosystem that we have there. And to reconnect to what Alberto just said, because the new position paper that has just been released by OpenDI with our contribution as well talks about data spaces for energy, home and mobility. So we also contributed there, showing what's our approach also with Saref and what we did in InterConnect extending this. Because what we're doing in InterConnect is also a good example for, well, for the other project, but the stakeholders that in general are interested to that because they will find the same problem we found. Maybe Saref that doesn't include already everything that it's in there and then needs to be extended. Well, then this is possible, but it's important then to go back to standardization, to ETSI, for example, to say, hey, that's what we found out, we want to contribute, and then extend and make it official in Saref in a new technical specification. So that's important also for the others to know. And InterConnect we know because we are already engaged in the standardization process. We want to make it explicit also for all the other stakeholders that are interested in Saref. So we started from Saref, you see it below, especially Saref, the core ontology, Saref for energy, Saref for city, and Saref for buildings. And we extended with several modules, which are, some of them are more horizontal, more core concepts like data points and time series can be used in any domain, but they are kind of important, so extend Saref. And something which is about, for example, user preferences. We had to go to a certain extent also in the little bit of a topology of the grid topology, although we're just touching upon that, but an entire work needs to be done in. And the most important contributions are those that you see into the right, which are about flexibility, because energy flexibility use cases were common to many of our pilots. Well, probably I would say almost all of them, the 7 pilots that we have. So we came up with a model for flexibility offers and so forth that can also communicate this flexibility also with the DSO interface and so forth. We created a new ontology based on S2, standard standard, well, called that mostly known as S2 because it's the interface that it's called S2, which goes to complement the already existing Saref for Energy version 1, which was based and created in collaboration with eBus and Energetom years ago. So therefore, we are now extending, broadening up the number of stakeholders that are involved in this. So this means that we will have a better Saref for Energy and stronger and even more standardized, which is good in this case. Having said that, we are in the process of standardizing the contributions that we have created in InterConnect in ETSI. So, well, it's a process that takes some time. There is a workflow, but we are into that. And I think I'll give it, yeah, now it's turn for Fabi again.
Thank you, Laura. So, How did InterConnect address all of these challenges, the challenges that we collected from pilots, from our partners, from looking at other initiatives? How was our process that then led us to our key exploitable result? So we wanted from the get-go to develop a distributed approach. Some of other solutions, some of our competition has been addressing these in the sense of doing centralized platforms, centralized systems, where we would collect all of data and where all the intelligence would be located. So from the get-go, InterConnected wanted to design an approach that would be distributed, that in a way is already going in the direction of what Svet was saying on bringing some intelligence to the edge and then exploring this edge continuum approach. So InterConnect uses these as a motto to provide a distributed-centric approach to interoperability. The handshake that I was telling in the beginning into interoperability is not only on the domain or on the data model, is also on the process that takes us to become interoperable. So in that sense, InterConnect also uses the profile of using some adapter software components that can attach to platforms in digital services as other platforms do. So this is not a weakness, this is something that is good, that makes the flow work better, taking some pre-existing knowledge of others and adopters. So we also integrated and streamlined this approach into the overall process of the framework. Yes, we are using Saref as our domain, but the technology that we provide, that we are presenting here, our key exploitable result, is in a way ontology agnostic. So this means that we are already prepared to go cross-domain if we change the agreement on what is our representation. Today, Saref, tomorrow could be a representative ontology, for instance, in the health field. We are ready to tackle that challenge. Of course, the part of security and privacy and trustworthiness is something that is very important. This was something that we already included on the framework to give control of those that own the data, to allow and to control who can use my data and who can do what with that data. Something that is very important on the provision of interoperability. And quite importantly, we went forward with the set of the framework in the sense that the project and our framework is composed of several distinct components that could be composed and used in different shapes. Our pilots, our large-scale pilots, are not only a way to demonstrate different use cases, they will also be a way to demonstrate how would we compose different arrays of using our tools from the framework to achieve interoperability. And finally, how could then we use this deployed, distributed, and how knowledge, and how could we orchestrate it to create federated knowledge pools that will allow us to, on a local basis, provide us answers to complex data schedulings. So, in this process, what InterConnect provides is in the InterConnect semantic proposition. So we start by looking at what partners already have, so manufacturers, providers, digital owners of digital solutions, and we start by looking at what is their synthetic interoperability level. So what this means, their user of APIs, what they already encompass. So what the project did was actually to deploy this Sarefization process, where we go through all of the APIs and data modeling capabilities and achieve what is domain representation of that knowledge. So that is, how can we move from a synthetic data exchange capability to a semantic data exchange capability based, on our case, on Saref. In the end, what this enables us and unlocks us is the possibility that now digital services will move from being able to ask and reply strict questions, so that is the basis of a regular API, to learn how can they ask questions on a domain-centric. So how is a good parallel to this is imagine that we ourselves can only ask and answer a bundle of questions. We are now able to learn the English language, for instance, our domain, and we are now free to ask any question that we may want. So this is the key motto, so this is the key results that InterConnect provides us, to provide in a technological agnostic way the capability to ask any possible question on our domain, Saref and energy. So in order to do this, our key exploitable resource, the InterConnect Semantic Interoperability Framework, deploys these capabilities into a set of components. So a project-wise service store that provides us with what is the capabilities available, what are the services available that we have and to which we can interact, a group and a series of interconnection points, our adapters that use this procedure of enabling new capabilities on top of software services and providing this gateway, so there is the Sarifization capability, and through all of these, the capability to exchange this data in an orchestrated yet distributed and flexible way. So this will allow us to move from what is a domain-centric interoperability approach to something that will allow us to reason, so that is to extract further knowledge from the one that is a priori provided by our data models. So here, the key component that we have on our semantic interoperability framework is a component that we call the knowledge engine. So this is the component that will enable us to federate data acquisition, to allow and to be centric on a distributed approach, and that will enable us to collect all of this data in this distributed fashion. We call it knowledge bases. So each one of the services that are distributed along our plats will be able to start to collect information, to grow what is the knowledge that they can exchange, and then be prone to ask questions that other parties within the ecosystem are able to now provide on our domain, so being, in this case, Saref. So I would like to always provide here an example of what we were and what we can now do. So this is actually a setup on how the knowledge dissemination works using the Semantic Interoperability Framework. So we do have on the left-hand side a service that has its own service logic, so that means its own API, proprietary or open. On the right-hand side, we would have a sibling approach. How can we now make them work together? So this Sarifization process that partners went through will render a component, the adaptation, that in the project we call the SSA, so that is the service-specific adapter. You can see that on the middle box on both ends. And then we have our smart connector, so there is our interconnection point that will now assist data being exchanged. And what is the key result and what is the key advantage that the Semantic Interoperability Framework provides is that not only are we now able to express our answers in terms of our domain, so there is not a strict data model, but something that looks alike what we have here. So what is this? This is a graph pattern expressed on an ontology, okay? And most importantly, we are now able to use this sort of information that expresses and characterizes our question, what we want to ask, and how we will be able to collect that answer into 4 simple interactions. So there is the ability to ask and to answer, and the ability to send information and to react on information. And this is something that is quite different from other approaches, where we do have strict application of these questions and answers that we can provide, so there is a regular API. So we are now flexible on what we can do on the basis of our 4 basic building blocks of interaction: asking and answering, providing information, and reacting on information. And with this, we are now free from implementation-specific semantic synthetic interoperability approaches, and now we are now free to use domain-specific representations and use these simple building blocks to to orchestrate how our services interact. So this is the key advantage of InterConnect. This is what is our added value. This is what we want to provide on interoperable ecosystems. So in the after session, on the other room, we can already see a demo of some of the integration that we have provided on using the Semantic Interoperability Framework in practice. And we want to briefly overview what we will be able to see on the next room. So a first example of interoperability in practice is actually in a use case that will be provided by the Dutch and by the Portuguese pilots within InterConnect, which is related to the use of white goods in seek to provide a home that is smart and that can accommodate energies within the energy grid. This is just a very small example where we have white goods deployed at the smart homes, where we have EMSs, so there is energy management systems that will provide this interface with the home and that will orchestrate how these white goods can interact and can optimize consumption and also other comfort access within the homes. And where the EMS is in direct control with the grid needs. So is there flexibility? Is flexibility large? Is flexibility short? How can the EMS provide this capability? So this is one use case that we will see there, and that is actually accommodated by using InterConnect, the InterConnect Semantic Interoperability Framework, as this handler to mediate what is happening between the energy management service that could be for one given provider, and on the other side, with the cloud of manufacturers, okay? So this is one important thing. The interoperability framework is something that is complementary, that can of course be used to achieve semantic interoperability, but at any given time, it has also to work together with already existing proprietary approaches from the manufacturers. So manufacturers don't want to lose control of their appliances, but they are willing to give some control to third-party services in order to provide a better ecosystem for the home. So what we will see is the capability of using the framework to work in tandem with manufacturer-specific approaches and applications that we can see here, that will use, of course, specific standards to go and talk with the devices themselves, but at the same time, provide SAREF-centric data exchange powered by the Semantic Interoperability Framework of InterConnect to allow third-party systems to also interact. Particularly, we will also be able to see exactly this, the capability of using the InterConnect Semantic Interoperability Framework here, particularly using the knowledge engine component, to use the services of a manufacturer. In this case, we will be using BSH as an example, and also using a secondary energy management system, in this case the one provided by InterConnect, to control the white good on place. So we will be able to see that the white good will respond to a request to start the operation, in order to control what is the capability of the grid to accommodate such requests. Okay. In a nutshell, since we also have here in our group our colleague Miguel from Schneider Electric, we also like to provide a sneak peek of what is also the use of the Semantic Interoperability Framework beyond systems that can provide this building integration of interoperability. So the previous use case covers these more residential parts using white goods. We also have this foreseen, particularly in this case in the Portuguese demonstrator, the use of our Semantic Interoperability Framework paired together with the EcoStructure Building Operation Manager from Schneider Electric that will provide this holistic view on the components and sensors that exist in buildings, in our case, commercial buildings, so particularly supermarket stores, and integrating with other third-party systems from other vendors, such as digital twin systems that we will have from Sensinov, and of course the needs from the DSO interface, also another key exploitable result on our project that will encompass the DSO dimension of it. So in a nutshell, and to close, the Semantic Interoperability Framework provides this software as a service capability to provide interoperability that is complementary. We are not replacing what is out there. We are yet complementing these capabilities and going one step ahead of what is currently existing and deploying semantic interoperability in large scale. Okay? Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Fabio, and thank you, Lara, for the presentation. Questions? So we're on top of the agenda. Thank you. Just one question. The last month, I conduct a workshop with our system integrators, and in Portugal we have 20. So what's worldwide? It's about 50,000. So it's a lot. And I showed this just to get a feel, because I believe that in the future they will use this technology, I hope. And one of the top questions that we have was,
how to build this data model. We are using Sarif, and I like Sarif because they have several domains, energy, buildings, and we are interested in the buildings and also in the energy, but this was the main question, how to build this data model. Do you have any tool? Are we thinking about that? So,
Thank you.
I guess maybe it's something for me. So as I mentioned, so this is, well, there is something behind all this, including methodology and tools and so forth. So everything is in the hands of ETSI. ETSI is the European Telecommunication Standardization Institute. So whenever there is something new that wants to be added, then we can always contribute, and we will make even, it was mentioned that there will be even a workshop, so maybe something that they can join, and we could already start, and then becoming aware of how this process starts. Besides that, there is still being provided by ETSI, there is a website portal for SAREF where all the models are there, and where the tools also for, basically it's a repository where people can also submit issues and improve on the data model and so forth, so for what's not already in there. Concerning tool support, well, that's a long way that we can definitely improve. So our first experience in InterConnect was to do quite a lot of manual work because we needed to get there and focus on making this happen for the first time. I think we have a couple of tools that can help. We have something to visualize the graph, these graph patterns that were shown in there. And we have, we're improving on that, but it's a fundamental part that we need to improve now if we want really the adoption of these to become a reality. So we are perfectly aware, and it's just that we needed to start with all the rest. So to answer is, there will be improvements in the way to make the experience much better of who is using this, and also for contributing it when they don't find yet things in the model. But even we will in the future also improve on the even browsing these ontologies, because I can say this is the website, but still people come to me and ask, Laura, where do I find this and that? So it means that we need to do something better on that and create a really better user experience, which is a common problem with ontologies. The perception that they can help is there, but the tool and the way to go, well, we are paving the way. I think we are very much ahead in InterConnect, helping in there, but then we can do even more on the user experience, also of the developers.
I think we have a question from Albert.
Another question is, do you think, to both of you, do you think there are some use cases within InterConnect or beyond InterConnect for which the benefits of the semantic interoperability is maximized and more visible? For example, when you have scalability of devices that are sometimes connected, sometimes not, when you have services that are changing, when there are parameters that are changing. So which is, in your view, the ideal use case to prove the suitabilities and the benefits of semantic approach?
So Laura, if you allow me, I would start answering. There is clearly a type of use case that is the one that will benefit the most of these strategies, and in my opinion, these are the use cases that are tackling non-energy services such as comfort, okay? And particularly services that we need to connect and to extract information from multiple domains. So in a way, this is already a little bit cross-domain, even though the project itself is not centered on cross-domain approaches. What we are providing is already one step to provide this cross-domain approach. We cannot forget, and this is something that, of course, within the time frame of this presentation, we didn't went deeper on this point, is that we are providing these semantic representations of data. So there is one step after what we can have on this baseline that the project now provides, which is the capability of reasoning. So reasoning is inferring data. So that is to extract new information based on data that is already out there. So this is also complementary with going cross-domain. And so These type of use cases that are aiming to tackle comfort, so something that will require data from the grid side, something that will require information from weather systems, for instance, from user preferences, so for lifestyle, and even where the output is to provide yet another service that could provide more comfort and more lifestyle to the consumer, is definitely the class of use cases where we see the most use out of this. In a second axis, that is not necessarily use case related, is the capability of these services to discover new destinations of their data and new parties where they can interface with. These previous approaches, more prone to use syntactic approaches, usually use what is a pair approach. So I contact you, we agree, and we establish a relationship on that basis. We are now moving on to this more semantic capability of expressing data, so that also allows us freedom, so that today I interface with you with a problem, and tomorrow I can just look on the marketplace of capabilities and that the services provide, and could interact with a new party in a more easy and straightforward way. So there is clearly the two types of approaches that the technology and methodology that we provide will also foster for the beginning. Just one opportunity to also complement on the previous answer. In InterConnect, of course, we went through all of this hurdle and effort of doing things manually. Newcomers will be able to learn by example. So the services that went through all of this RFization process will become a large repository on using and adopting this new data modeling capability. So for the get-go, the newcomers that we will have, even on the Cascade funding tender that was just launched and that will start soon, these newcomers that have never seen what is the methodology or the approach will be able to leverage on this repository of services that already went through this process. So tools will help, but also learn by example will help. So step by step, we think that this could become something that everyone could use.
Okay, it's time to stop here. We could be talking here the whole afternoon, I'm sure. So let's first of all thank all of our speakers today that had very great presentations today and very good discussions to all of them. Let's have a round of applause thanking them. And now for a short break, because we're a bit behind schedule. So we have 15 minutes for a short break. We have a coffee break outside. We also have a demonstration area there. Don't be too shy on appearing there, but if you don't have time to show it everywhere we can have it always after the next session. So I'll invite you to join us in 15 minutes here again for the second session. And again, thanking the speakers for this very good session. Thank you. experience on more aspects where we have different representatives in our panel today, from service provision, from industry, also associations, which is a key point for us, which is those that will take forward actually the adoption of the Semantic Interoperability Framework and other developments that we had in the project. So it will be a very good discussion. It will be moderated by Luis Seque from our side, where we'll have the opportunity to debate some of more practical aspects of what we discussed so far. So really curious to see what will the discussion be. And then I'll invite all of the audience in between. If you have questions, if you want to intervene, just raise your hand. Someone will appear with a mic. Most likely me. Okay.
Okay, so thank you, David. So thank you, everyone. We have a tough fight because we are fighting against a dryer machine that is working on the other side that took us some of the audience. Let us hope with our discussion we can bring people back because we also think it could be very interesting. So, as David mentioned, we will now have a short conversation on the role of the industry in the InterConnect project. In fact, we have more than industrial partners, right, Milenko? You did mention that several times. And we think it's important because we are trying to bring a more global perspective for this discussion. And what is, in fact, the problem? I must confess that being a power system engineer, all of these is about the space and semantics are things that are very complex to me. I'm used to discuss kilowatts and inverters, and so this issue is complex. So being InterConnect, a project that also has this application domain on the energy side, I will try to pull this discussion more to the energy side now, because I think it is important and where I can have a more added value. I was thinking a little bit before we started this discussion on the recent events, and it's interesting to see we have all assisted in the last, let's say, 15, 20 years to a complete change in the electrical system. So we moved from something that was very vertical and hierarchized and with large power plants and with very steady and static consumers with similar diagrams. We understood the need because of global warming that we had to integrate renewables. We started integrating renewables. The first projects appear because we understand that the variability associated with renewables might be an issue for the electrical grids. How can we manage this? So a lot on smart grids and smart meters and so on. And because we understood that this was an issue and that we needed to ramp up, there were several policies that would support now that we would evolve to a distributed system. So self-consumption, rooftop solar panels, local storage, EVs, and everything seemed to be going in a very good direction with several manufacturers providing solutions and people at home. If you have a Tesla, you had a Powerwall and you could use it. If you had any other solution, everything was going fine. Until these last events, I think, that made a huge difference. The fact that Europe is facing this war and the decision of the Commission with REPowerEU that we need to increase our independence in terms of energy. It is in fact associated with global warming and climate change, but at the same time, we understand that the role of demand, everyone discusses flexibility, now is something that needs to be really implemented. We don't remember, I don't think, to hear a lot on having the eventual need to curtail in the winter, on this winter, our energy use. We assume that energy is something that is there, we plug everything we need every day and we have gas and so on. So this is a change that I think that coming from the Commission does come in the moment where some of the things that we have been discussing here can be extremely important. And that's where I would like to put the focus of our discussion, because I think that this acceleration will in fact require a higher involvement from demand, particularly now that we discuss energy communities, buildings, blocks of buildings. So the capacity to deal with this variability, of course, we always have the discussion on nuclear, but that would leave us to an endless story now. But if we consider renewable, we must understand that the tools for flexibility to be able to be mobilized need to evolve. And the tools cannot be very, let's say, dependent on the action of the end users, because as we all know, we have several end users that don't even understand their monthly invoice and the costs that they pay for electricity. So it's up to us to create these solutions. And so it's the reason why I think that it highlights the importance of InterConnect, because in this ecosystem, I think we have made some steps towards something that can be really scalable and replicable, that provides this agnostic capacity that the electrical system requires. And so, after this introduction, and for this discussion, I have here a set of distinguished guests that will help us to understand what are the necessary changes, the challenges for this sustainable ecosystem. So starting from my right, I have Milenko Tosic. He's a Director of Innovation at Vislor Labs Foundation, a non-profit R&D organization that is focused on innovative projects in all IoT verticals. His expertise areas are domains of IoT, distributed technology, education works, artificial intelligence. Thank you, Milenko. Then on my left side, Robert Bohm. He's a Managing Director of eBus Initiative, a German non-profit organization with international members from the automotive, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, white goods, PV, energy storage, as well as energy management sector. Robert held various management positions in the industry prior to joining eBus, and so he can also give us a very interesting vision. So as Josef, that also studied electrical engineering. He has nearly 40 years of technical and management experience in mobile and wireless telecommunications, broadband, smart home, and energy management technology. Since 2011, he is working with BSH Home Appliances and is responsible for smart home and energy appliances standardization. He has been very important in this project, as he is a member of smart home and grid standardization bodies, and as we all have seen today, standardization is something that is required for many of these things that we are discussing. Finally, Miguel Gonçalves. He started his activity at Schneider Electric in 2010 in the building management system team as the project manager. In 2017, he started a new role as product application engineering with the aim of designing and promoting EcoStruxure technology, combining Schneider's Electric's offering with third-party offering. He currently has a role as solution architect engineer, and most of his time is dedicated to training and developing the skills of Schneider Electric technology partners. Actually, you made a question on that. So, gentlemen, thank you all for your presence, and let us see if we can clarify some of the most critical aspects of this transition we have been discussing. And perhaps given the nature of the institution, I can start with you, Robert. So as someone that represents so many industrial partners that provide solutions for demand to be able to cope with this transition, what are, from your point of view, the major challenges to guarantee that all these devices are able to cope with this need of flexibility from demand?
Thank you. And is that working? No.
Is that? David will bring an interoperable microphone. It works for sure.
Hello?
See?
Yeah. Interoperable maybe also depends on the personality using the technology.
And on the power, as I
Okay.
did say.
Yeah, okay. So thank you for your question, and you already mentioned it when stating who eBus is. eBus itself is of course not from the industry, but it represents all its industrial members, which is around 60, and you already said from which domain our members come from. And this is very important to understand my answer, because since the very beginning, EIBAS has been cross-domain, with members founding the organization with the idea of this cross-domain interoperability. And now, and you also said it in the introduction, over the last couple of years, the rising number of renewables plus all the electric vehicles, heat pumps, raised new questions that were not yet there in the beginning, when the focus of the EIBAS was a little bit different, but now it became into the focus. And where do these cross-domain actors actually meet? So we have different device manufacturers, like charging station manufacturers, heat pump manufacturers, and as devices that consume a lot of energy, we have PV panels that are producing energy, and so all of them physically meet. If you want to look at it, they meet at the grid connection point where they meet the distribution system operator. And now we have different stakeholders in this game. And this is probably more the view that you took as somebody from this from the background of power industry. So we have different stakeholders with different ideas what they want to make. We have the DSO, whose role is to guarantee grid stability, which is completely different to some automotive players or heat pump players that now realize that their products can actually do more than in the past, simply working as products, what they want, but they can serve as flexibility tools. You said flexibility tools.
Yes.
And this leads to new ideas of business. Some business models are not yet clear, is still in the momentum of being shaped. So you have actors in the market, and this is the industry role, that think about how can I make money in the future with this new environment that is shaping up. And then you have the traditional role of a grid operator that wants to stabilize the grid, and they actually meet at the grid connection point. And now I'm coming to the answer of the question. What I understand from our members, what they ask most for is, today there is no international standard for this communication interface at the grid connection point. And this is actually what we have been working out as a core focus for the last 2 years, because we have a German application rule, but that is Germany specific, and now we want to promote an international standard for that. And why is that so important? It is so important for our industrial members because only such a standard can give them the required investment security. Because if they invest into a protocol for their products that is related to huge development costs, that is related to quality efforts afterwards, and they will only do this management decision on something like this if they have investment security. And this can only be guaranteed by a standard, and that's what we're aiming at.
Great that you mentioned investment, because my next question to Josef, that is tricky. With so many years of experience, how does a company such as VSH see this interoperability thing after so many years of investment in proprietary solutions to excite the market and grab consumers? How will such a company differentiate if we now assume that everything plugs in, works, whatever you have as a manufacturer?
First of all, yeah, I think it was a very, very long trip until now, until we have now decided. Let me give you 3 major points. I had 3 bosses during that time. I started in 2011 with the first one. We are market access. Market access means regulation, means standardization, and standardization means interoperability. So my first task was to see and to look how to get a standard, how to establish a standard, And that was also the reason, not only looking at Senelec and ISC, but also with the EBAS initiative I joined in 2012. My second boss told me, or we discussed about that, and and we found out that if we only look onto white goods, it's not sufficient, definitely not. And he allowed me to be the managing director of EBAS initiative before Robert, and for a couple of years to broaden that approach, to have a common view on all the devices in premises. That was the second one. And the third one, 2.5 years ago, we also had another discussion, and he told me, hey, if we don't investigate, we never ever get a solution. We had already a solution, an in-between solution in 2016, but that was not very successful, but also from the marketing side, yeah? Mm-hmm. So that means now what we see is, on the other hand, that's also very important. I have asked so many times our product management, when do you want to implement, what do you want to implement, and they told me who does need that until roughly 12 months ago. And that was the reason why we thought about, hey, if we can make it happen to start with legacy products, to implement it as Spine IoT API in our HomeConnect cloud, together with Miele and others, then we can ensure interoperability. We are talking about the same, and we can use legacy devices for that same kind of purpose. So that is the situation today. Today we are a step ahead because Jochen, my successor, this is one of my last days with BSH, in total 3 days now, but anyhow, started a new project so that we do not want only to support InterConnect as a pilot. We want to make that open to everybody and every energy manager during the next year. Hopefully we get it until IFA next year. Jochen will take care about that. So that means we now decided to go for this way. Having said that, is now the product manager are thinking about, hey, I have an oven. If he informs about my consumption or his consumption during the time, or a cooking plate, does that also help the environment or the managing of the energy and so forth? So that now it's starting. Now it's really starting, and I'm really happy that we did that step to at least to enable this feature. And I think it was a very, very hard trip, and I'm really happy that my management allowed me to work for 10 years without any perspective. Now it's coming.
Yes, and I recognize that you did your job very well, because it's obvious that there's a commitment not only on the white goods, things are starting to grow to others. But the problem is that, and now talking a little bit with Miguel, these appliances are installed in buildings where you can have residential or service buildings. We know buildings represent something like 40% of electricity consumption in terms of primary energy, so it's quite relevant. Many people interact with all these devices every day, but it's clear that people do not want to be constantly interacting with them and using apps to connect and disconnect things. That's not the way we go. We also learned that a few years ago. But when you go to the building level, where you can have the aggregation factor, I feel that somehow these systems are not prepared, because they tend to be very reactive and respond according to certain needs. I know you at Schneider have been working on this. What is your perspective? How can we address this challenge at the building level?
Well, the challenge and the needs came from the customers, from the end users, of course. And we have several types of end users. For example, we have end users that they join to energy community, and that's it, they are green. but the building have the same problem, is an inefficient building, okay? We have customers, for example, that look for our solutions just to comply regulations or to achieve certain certifications, okay? They don't care about the control or whatever. And then we have end users that install solar panels, EV chargers, heat pumps, and in the end they remember, well, I need to control this. I need to optimize all this washing machines, okay, the appliance. And on that stage, they start to look for Schneider to give a solution. Of course, we have solutions from the sensor controller to the digital service. But, for example, for a residential home, it's a very expensive solution. It's not cheap. So we are looking to the InterConnect project to look for solutions that can be more competitive without having all this layer of software or service level. And by this way, we can also reduce the implementation cost of these solutions, okay? We understand that using this kind of solution, we may have a wider offer of services, not only Schneider service, but third parties also. And that's what we are looking for. Okay.
Okay, yeah, because it's a very relevant aspect, and one that concerns me is when we power systems engineers make the medium and low voltage networks, we assume the simultaneity factor, and now everyone can decide to charge the EV at the same time, and it's sunny and they are all south oriented at the same time. How will this be managed? So this is really challenging. And Milenko, you have heard them talk about these challenges up to now. You look at the things at a different perspective. Looking at what we have built here, this InterConnect Interoperability Framework, what do you think they are the main requirements and concerns that these industrial partners may have if they want to adopt this technology?
Okay, so basically what I have been doing within the InterConnect project, together with Fabio, was leading the specification and development of the Semantic Interoperability Framework. And we approached it in, let's say, unbiased way, since both Inestek and Wislor are not part of this industrial domain. So we were bold to recommend to bridge what different industrial partners are doing. And yeah, the methodology that we applied was quite agile, considering our partners as stakeholders for our development, for the solutions we are developing, collecting the requirements from them. And let me share two main conclusions. If we categorize our industrial partners as large industry and SMEs, we can see, as Robert said, large industry is really looking into the standards as a way to manage risk, while SMEs are looking into large industry to manage risks. So if Bosch is doing something a certain way, SMEs know that by being compliant, by being interoperable with what Bosch is doing, they have a big piece of the market. So this is the relation. I'm not saying that the standards are not something that SMEs are concerned with, but I'm saying that usually the technology stacks that SMEs are bringing are more flexible. They're more let's say, ready to experiment, to apply new technologies, while the industrial partners are really assessing the risk and doing, as we say in the software development, more waterfall planning. They want to be sure before they really push for the development, for the integration. This is one thing. The other thing is, when we were talking about semantic interoperability, which at the beginning of the project was also a quite new concept for myself, is that, yeah, we introduced this utopian vision of federated knowledge across the whole Europe. Everybody can tap into this potential. Knowledge is disseminated, reasoning, inferring new knowledge, and so on. Sounds good, but then data needs to come somewhere. And if the industry is going to actually apply something like that. They want to do it step by step. So we started with this large vision, and then we needed to adapt the set of tools and methodologies that we have be implemented as part of the interoperability framework to allow partners to choose with whom they want to share the data, where they want to deploy it. They want this. This is also reflected in the, of course, the data spaces and all the requirements that come from there. Self-sovereignty on the level of the institutions, and also full governance of the data exchange. This came to our attention before we were actually aware of the concept of the data spaces and the Commission, what they are doing, different initiatives in this respect. So the framework allows partners to take it step by step, test it in the control environments, and then of course decide when to expand, when to build more robust use cases.
So we have two lighthouses, big companies pushing, and InterConnect also pushing to giving this confidence about this state and so on, which I think is great in the stage that we are now entering. That is precisely the 7 ambitious pilots that the project has, and we all know that, and we have been testing the machine and all the problems associated with live demonstrations that only the people that do it know what they mean. So coming back to you, Robert, how do you feel that these demos, these 7 demos that we have, can have this scale-up effect to pull others to adopt such an approach?
That is wait to be seen, but first of all, it's nice to have again Joseph on the right hand, to have this real life demonstrator next door, because again the white goods are first, you know. They have been first in the beginning in 2012 when it came across the founding of the IBAS, when at that time, I mean, it was not really, I would say, the hot topic. So it's really kind of long-term perspective, kind of strategic thinking. What I find, this is innovation at its best, if you want to say, because then 10 years after, everybody can see, yeah, that's a hot topic, we need to do something. But the real thing is when you have people in big companies and they are allowed to work on these kind of topics. So, and that's why for me it's not a surprise that we have a dryer from Joseph next door. But then actually our pilot projects are, so to say, the demonstrators for all the others that participate. And here we need to say it's not just Schneider Electric or Bosch that participate in the InterConnect project. We have other manufacturers, and we have also other members from IBAS that actively participate. And I think that for them, these pilots are kind of demonstrators. And at least from our members, from what I hear, that is for them, it is also important that this is at European level, because there are many, you know, country-specific funded projects, and it gives you some kind of reputation, it gives you some kind of marketing effect in your home country. But then all the big manufacturers, they do international sales. Again, this is why they ask for an international standard and not just for a local standard. So, and to that respect, I think that projects like InterConnect are really helpful because they give the European scene or international scene, and then these pilots become demonstrators. And again, I think from the number of participants that we already have, yes, this will have definitely a pull effect. And why? Because for us that are now working in this scene, it will be the first time that we show at such a scale that it works. And talking about the IBAS, I mean, our intention is to show that it works with either already serial products or products that are close to become serial products. And before, over the last couple of years, we have already seen pilot projects, but many pilot projects, they were just, you know, mantled one by one. It was a craftsman solution that worked for this pilot, but could not be rescaled. And I think there's a big difference now. So yes, I'm optimistic that that will help here.
Yeah, and the proof, for who doesn't know or can understand, Josef actually brought the dryer machine working at a hotel himself in a van. So if that's not interoperable, what could that be? But besides this particular difficulty, what are the main challenges that BSH has found in the project so far? When you have these demos, when you have to go to the field, what do you feel that are the main barriers that you felt?
Good question. What are barriers? I think you need to remove them, yeah?
Besides the van.
Besides the van, yeah. Now, I think this InterConnect project for me was really a very, very good success because, first of all, we have implemented our first version, our so-called InterConnect version already 1 year ago. In the meantime, we used the time to improve that and to make that standard compatible. So that means we now, in these days, end of September, we are launching the EN5631, the standard, where we have included the SPINE IoT with the for the white goods, with the home HVAC devices as well. So that means everything is already included. We have already made a huge step ahead, and we try to bring this into InterConnect beginning or spring next year latest. We can use that to test everything. What I found out is that, of course, you now recognize a couple of issues. Yeah, at least testing this device here and at home, yeah, already popped up a couple of issues. But I think for me, the main constellation is pretty much clear because we have, for example, here a proof of concept. We have a standard based on SPINE IoT. This SPINE IoT standard is completely compatible with SARA for HANA, as already mentioned by Laura. We did it already a couple of years ago. And this is now attached via the service-specific adapter to an environment. I do not have any knowledge about the environment, but it works, yeah? From the manufacturer point of view, that result what I expect. I offer an interface, and it works. Second point is this leads us to a situation. Having that compliant with SARA for HANA gives us the freedom in a couple of years if we have proceeded with SARA and if it is much more mature, then we can swap directly from SPINE IoT, if that makes sense, if that is applicable, to SARA for HANA. And it works because it is more or less the exchange of names or the exchange of the query process, nothing more. So that is something that already leads into the future and gives us the possibility to stick to what we have developed the last couple of years, yeah?
So I must say that not only for the respect of the effort that Josef and the rest of the team made, you must all see what they have on the other side, because from my point of view, again, the power systems engineer, I just see one single connection to a plug and it's working, and suddenly it seems like someone is inside putting the machine on and off and delaying and so on. So for me, using a tablet or whatsoever to do that is really amazing, because it really represents a huge step in the direction that we are focusing on the project. So although I know it's late and all of us have to go home, I would definitely ask you to see, because it's the effort of a team that not only brought the machine but made the thing work. And this is a...
May I add one?
Yeah.
One?
You can add whatever you want.
No.
You have the status to do that.
No. I really like that approach because now we have a situation that we cannot show it today here because of the situation here, but it doesn't matter. As a user, you only need to program when the cycle needs to be ready, yeah? When you expect that it is ready, nothing more. So that means completely the same process you do if you start your washing, your drying, your dishwashing cycle and so forth. Second point is you now can select which provider do I want to have. For example, we can make that example here. Either we use an energy manager in Groningen or we use the energy manager in Porto. It's only switching on and off or switching between. That is what I as a user expect. And that is something what really gives us the future in using that and the ease of use in the future.
Yeah, that's a very important point. No, and it's relevant because what you said is what the consumer needs to have is the liberty to choose the behavior and let the system do the rest without any sort of constant interaction and so on, which I think it's very relevant. Milenko, why do you think that it is important that this framework is validated in these demos by these industrial partners? How relevant it is?
I think that Fabio put it nicely earlier today, learning by example. It means that, yeah, partners are early adopters of the technology we are developing. They're going to a lot of pain points to map their existing data models, their existing ways of interfacing to the new way, to the semantically interoperable way, to the graph patterns and everything that we bring in front of them. Yeah, this learning by example, I mean, the best confirmation of the success of way of social networks. We cannot argue that they are quite complex systems, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, but everybody's using them. Everybody is capable of making a post, of now people know how to make a proper photo, how to make a proper YouTube video, with TikTok and everything like that. Those systems are quite complex, a lot of functionalities that don't have to make any sense to the newcomers, but you're able, through the nature of the social network, to learn by example. So this way, if we have good success stories, if we have working examples coming from the industrial partners, coming from the research institutions and everything, well documented, well validated, this will be the main selling point for the exploitation of the framework itself. And yeah, this is the key outcome of the pilots, in my opinion, really. So, and I think that we will have first ability to validate this approach through the cascade funding, through the open calls,
yeah.
And the first partners are actually going to be onboarded quite soon.
Learn by example. There's always one question that I know you're quite sensitive, Miguel, that is legislation. And sometimes in these projects we demonstrate a whole set of things, it works, but then when we want to go to the field, we cannot do it because legislation is there. And regulation is essential, for sure, in a system that is critical, but at the same time we understand that to move on, things have to change. How do you think, we know that there are these now energy communities and microgrid operation. We discussed microgrids for, I don't know, 20 years, the first project I worked on microgrids. We know there are a lot of recommendations, but as you did mention a while ago, in the ecosystem, and ecosystem is not only manufacturers, is the OEMs, is the installers, are they prepared for this? Do we have legislation to support all these fancy things that we are testing here?
Well, the reality that I know in Portugal, no, we are not ready for that. I can give you an example. We have an association in Portugal, which we call APIRAC. It's an association of HVC systems. And they wrote a manual we call the SAS. And in this manual, well, we have the best practices for building management systems and energy management systems based on the EU new legislation, of course. And they have a paragraph there talking about the microgrids, the capability of building management systems to integrate microgrids. So this is just a recommendation. And the question that we have made to the APIRAC Association is, okay, this is a recommendation, but how can we do this? How can we say to the prescription guy that make the project to describe this system? How can this be done? So the DSO, who is the DSO that can give us this this need? This is a problem. So we have recommendations, but it's not yet obligations because the definition is not yet made. So I think we have to standardize what is the interface, I'm going to say something technical, the APIs of the DSOs in first place, because in Portugal we don't have this, for example, and I think that many of the countries don't have this functionalities available. We have to standardize this, and I think InterConnect is a good tool for that, to then take the next step to obligate this new functionalities using the regulations. As I said before, we have customers that are looking for Schneider to comply some regulations and some certifications. So regulations also bring needs to the market, not only the end users, okay?
Can I add one, please?
Yes, you
because
can.
This question also goes into what is concerning our members and what is often discussed inside EIBAS. I just want to add, the human nature does normally work better when it is incentivized than punished. And for us, the big question is, if you have, you called it tools of flexibility. So how do you want to use these tools of flexibility to give grid support? There we need a kind of regulation, how to incentive the users that have these flexibility tools, like if you give away part of the control of flexibility, you get in return, or you have to pay less fees for grid operation fees, we call that. So, and this is still lacking. It is under discussion in Germany, as many of you might know. I don't know the same discussions in other European member states, and I would, if I had a wish, would like the EU to be more active in that field.
So, the standards are there, the demos are there. We need, as you said in the social network, now to make a little fuss on the things that we are capable to do, to try to take to the public in general the perception that this sort of approach actually works, so that people can give the value that this flexibility has. And I remember one of the aspects, if you ask anyone, would you accept a 50% discount in your energy tariff if you were curtailed from 6.9 to 345 between 3 and 6? People will say 50%, great, I would. But then if they understand that it can represent €3 in a year, they will say, maybe not. So the idea that things can cope with people's needs and the business models, these are the ways to go. I would like to thank all of you. I made my best effort because David, as we had 10 minutes, I want them to go and see the machine. I think it was a very good discussion. Of course, we can go to the other side if anyone wants to ask any question, to which one of my distinguished guests be my guests. Thank you for being present until now. And let's hope that you can also disseminate some of the things that you have seen here and discussed here as a result, because coordinating this project with David has been a tremendous task, We are so many, there are so many issues every day. And for us, it's really, really important that people see this effort and that guys from academia, from the companies to manufacturers to everyone is involved trying to take this to another level. This is a hotel, so it's a proper place to see a dry machine working. We could actually ask for some towels or whatsoever. So we are not in a lab with specific wires in the specific use case using our technology, our control. We are using a Wi-Fi that is from the hotel, and so really a pleasure to be here with all of you, and I would like to thank with an applause to all my guests for all this.
Very quickly, no sound. Where to short here. Just to emphasize, we have interoperability working. Thank you. Okay, just to tell you that there's also other points to showcase on the other rooms. So it's besides the dry. The dry is a notable element there. But there's also other exhibitions there, notably from Inetum, also from Wings ICT and other partners that made also an effort to bring it here. The next stop will be IoT Week. So probably we'll have an opportunity to meet again, most of you there, but we'll be able also to take again the dryer. This time Joseph won't be driving, so we'll be sharing with Aachen this mission. But anyhow, it's really important to emphasize that our colleagues from Inetum also came here to showcase their approach to the smart house, and it's really important to see there. And they have a very, very, very cool gadget there, a very small one, but very cool. So enjoy. I hope that you enjoyed this session too. Again, it was this good effort to bring in people together now for this new reunion that we have in person, and very good to have this discussion with all of you. So thank you very much. Enjoy. Bye-bye.